Okay, now I have a great model of a tapeworm. And so a tapeworm, an adult tapeworm, is going to have, well, some kind of head-like structure. This head-like structure is going to have suckers and maybe some hooks on the part that's called the scolex. Okay, so this whole part is the scolex, and then these are suckers, these are hooks. It's possible for there not to be any hooks at all and for there only to be suckers. Oops, you can't quite see that. I need to stretch the camera. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so here's just suckers. The other thing to note is that right after the scolex, we get these very beginning, and look, they're very tiny at the start, and then they get bigger and bigger, and each one of these segments is called a proglottid. Okay, so the proglottids are going to get larger and larger as they move down, as they grow. So growth is going to happen from the scolex down, and it's one big long ribbon. Remember, these are flatworms. And so if I go over and look here, this is showing one proglottid. And so we see the beginning of the next proglottid would be up here, and then the next proglottid posterior would be down here. And so as the animal grows, the internal anatomy matures. As we're looking inside here, we can see that these structures here, the little dots everywhere, those are the testes. And the testes, of course, are making sperm. And so they're going to move from the testes out the vas deferens. Okay, and are going to go out a genital pore, which is not on your diagram. Okay, I'm kind of looking at a diagram at the same time, but that's the vas deferens. Okay, so that's the male part. Again, these are hermaphrodites. We got male and female gonads in the same individual. They'd like to have sexual reproduction, fertilize somebody else's eggs to increase genetic diversity. Again, when it comes to being a parasite, it's not so much about eating, because you're living in food. It's about reproducing, and you don't know where your babies are going to go, right? So you want to have as many different kinds of babies as possible with the hope that some of them are going to be able to survive. All right, so let's look at the female reproductive system. So the female reproductive system, that sperm's going to come in here. I'd like a different pointer. Let's try this one. Okay, so it's going to come in here into the vagina. Okay. It's going to move into, and we have here is the oviduct. So this is where the eggs are being made. This here at the bottom is the yolk gland. The unicellular gland is this little brown circle. The unicellular gland is equivalent to the Mehlig's gland in the Clonorchus, a shell gland, if you will. It's going to provide a covering or coating around the embryo after fertilization occurs. Okay, so what do we have? We have ovary, we had vagina, we had unicellular gland. Oh, yeah, unicellular gland. We had yolk gland. Okay, and then this is just the beginning right here of the uterus. And so as fertilization occurs, it's going to occur in here. Then the growing embryos are going to be provided with nutrients and a covering, and then are going to be stored in the uterus. Okay, so there's a couple other structures we need to know here. We need to know the excretory canal, which is the blue. And that's the one that you can see the excretory canal on the slide. This one right here is supposed to be the nerve, and you really can't see that. So that's just something that you can paint on a model, but it's really hard to see it on the slide, so don't worry about that one. And it's not on your list of things to know. All right, is there anything else that I haven't gone through? No, we've gotten all the terms. Okay, but now let's look. So imagine if we then moved down the tapeworm and we moved posteriorly, we would then find proglottids that are slightly more mature. And so when things are more mature, they're a little bit larger, so the size is important. And then what structures are more visible? So when you're looking at the slides, they take segments towards the top of the tapeworm and then all the way towards the bottom of the tapeworm. So this is, just starting making some gametes, eggs and sperm. Here, fertilization is probably happening. We see that the uterus is getting larger and that the testes are less predominant. So most likely now dealing with fertilization, production of those embryos. By the time we get to the end of the tapeworm, the part that's going to break off and pass downstream with the feces, we see that the uterus now is just full. And sometimes in some textbooks or some sites, they call these structures inside here the eggs. But they're not just eggs. They're fertilized eggs. And so a fertilized egg is, well, it's an embryo. So all these little circles inside of here are embryos. And so this is a whole big one proglottid. And we see everything's really reduced, no real testes, you can't see any of those other structures. It's all eggs. It's all embryos. So this whole piece is going to break off, and it's going to crack open, and it's going to release all the embryos into the environment for the next host to lick up or swallow or whatever to get them inside of them. Okay, so that's where it's coming from. And so this particular model happens to show you that this is what a tapeworm embryo looks like on the inside, in that you have this outer covering, and then you actually have a little baby worm inside there with the scolex and the very beginning of proglottids. And so as soon as it's ready, it's going to, as soon as it's infective, so as soon as a host swallows it, then this outer covering breaks open and the worm comes out, and it's going to attach so that they can already have hooks and suckers on there, and so the little baby worm can then attach to your intestine and do a great job and start getting nutrients from you. All right, that's it. The end.